So if you've got a lot of fish tanks, you probably need a way to clean the water that you're using in your fish tanks. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, and a lot of different reasons you would use one way of filtering water over another for your application. Today I'm going to be talking about all the various ways that I use to clean my water before it goes into any of my fish tanks. And this is going to get a little bit technical. So we're going to start off at my well pump. So this system right here is connected to a pump that is placed many dozens of feet below the ground. And that is where we have a little aquifer of water that we pull water from. Now that water comes through here, and either it'll come through this green line right here, which will get filtered by a spin down filter in the fish room if I'm using well water directly, or it'll go through this spin down filter, which will clean the water from heavy debris and then put into a pressurized tank. So let's talk about that first method really quick. So well water directly from my well. That is water that I use in a lot of my fish tanks. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Now, tracing this green hose coming into my fish room, you'll see that it comes to its own specific spin-down filter. This one is just for the fish room. The one out by my well pump inlet is for the entire house. So you can see this is full of brown gunk, and that's because anything above 50 microns gets trapped on this metal mesh filter, and everything below that in the water passes through. To clean this out, I just open up this valve and water comes through and creates like a tornado of water and sucks all the gunk off the filter to get purged out by my sump pump. So that water then gets put into a vat, and this vat is just sitting there. It needs to be filled up some more, but it is plugged up to a fluval canister filter. Now, I know all this is kind of gross, but this isn't where the fish are going. Don't mind that. This room used to be, before I bought the house, was going to be a restroom. That's why there's a toilet in here. But it makes a really good spot to just dump wastewater. Anywho, that canister filter is fully cycled. And the reason I have this on here is because water naturally from my well contains ammonia. So before I put this water from this vat in any of the fish tanks, it goes through a full cycled filter to remove all the ammonia nitrate and convert it to nitrate. Then I also have this air stone, which aerates the water to ensure there's oxygen in the water from the very moment I start putting it in the fish tanks. Now from there I have this blue line, and this blue line is connected to a pond pump, and that pond pump is used at my discretion to fill up fish tanks with water. So the process of cleaning water can be a little messy, can be a little gross. That's why all this grossness is over here and not in the fish tanks. As you can see, the water is nice and clean, but it needs to go through cleaning processes before it's good enough to go in a fish tank. But that's not the only thing that happens. So if I'm not using water that comes directly from the well, it goes through a completely different process. So yes, it does go through the whole house spin down filter, and then it goes into this pressurized tank. This tank is pressurized anywhere from 40 to 60 psi, regulated by that cutoff switch. Now, once this is full with water that's been descaled by the spin down filter, it gets shoved through the main line. The main line then comes to a water softener, because here's the thing. This is the water that's going to be used for everything, including my laundry. So it needs to be descaled further, or at least softened in this case. So this water softener takes that hard water and converts, maybe not fully up to up to snuff on how exactly water softeners work, but it uses the salt to turn hard water into soft water. and that allows me to use it in appliances. However, that's a lot of salt because the TDS doesn't really change. It just takes what would be normally rust-causing elements and creates water that doesn't build up and calcify on the inner portions of my plumbing. So, softened water, good for appliances, not so much directly for fish. So what I then do is use a reverse osmosis filtration system. So, starting up here, this is the inlet where water goes into the softener, gets softened, and comes out. We then take that brine water, more or less, and it comes through to this pre-filter, which will capture some really small gunk, and then into a booster pump. That booster pump is going to take that residual pressure from 40 to 60 psi and bump it up to approximately just under 80 psi. It then goes through a series of filters, which sediment, pre-carbon, post-carbon. Then it goes through the RO membrane, then UVC sterilization, then nuclear grade deionization resin, and then from there into a big RO pressurized tank. Now this tank will be pressurized somewhere between 40 and 60 psi. But this will allow me to have about 15 gallons or so of water on demand at any given time. Now this is important because you really, I've been at a point in my life where I used to just have the RO system in the fish room, and I would just use it and create the water I needed and then shut it off. But it's kind of a pain in the butt. I'd rather just have the water ready for me whenever I need to use it. I also have all these lines coming out because this water is so clean. I just use it for my drinking water, as well as for the water that makes my ice for my refrigerator. So, yeah, it serves multiple purposes. So having a big pressurized tank allows me to use it for all these things and have water on demand, on tap whenever I need, for my fish tanks. Now, if I'm just topping off water from the tanks that get evaporated, I just take some clean water and from the RO system and put it in the fish tank. But some tanks require specialized water, like for my Siliwashi shrimp, that require that I start with RO water and mix it with a specialized salt mixture that is optimized to turn the relatively neutral water into a certain pH level, TDS, KH, GH, etc. And that gives a great starting point for water that needs to be used for sensitive shrimps. That water is put in 5-gallon jugs and then mixed together by just using a PVC tube to kind of spin it around and dissolve that salt mixture. From there, I just, well, not these tanks, but I'll just pour it in the tank. That's why my Siliwashi shrimp, which they're hiding, they're super shy in small numbers. But yeah, that's how I create like the super clean water and get it prepared for Siliwashi shrimp. The same thing is done for crystal red shrimp, and then I'm also going to be doing some similar things with the Neocaradinas. So that's a basic rundown of all the different filtrations that my water goes through and for what different purposes I do it for, how I do it. And it's a lot to take into consideration. It's a lot of money to set up, but it definitely makes the whole breeding of shrimp much easier, more reliable, and it makes the whole having a bunch of fish tanks at once a much easier thing to maintain and take care of, because that's a lot of water you gotta clean and make sure is proper.